Hello, and welcome to the Professional Pricing Society's podcast. I am Lisa Fisher, Senior Director with the Professional Pricing Society. Today, we will feature Alex Shartis, co-founder and CEO of Perfect Price. Today's topic of discussion is dynamic pricing's real-world applications. Hey, Alex, and thanks for joining us. We're happy to have you, and we look forward to your pricing expertise. If you would please just briefly introduce yourself and share with our listeners about who you are and your background and how they can find you on social networks.
Sure. Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Alex Shartis, the co-founder and CEO of Perfect Price. I've been with Perfect Price for a number of years now, working on pricing with some of the largest companies in the world, as well as some of the smallest companies in the world. And before that, I've been in the tech industry at top tech startups for the last decade or so. So we're really excited to be here and talk about AI and pricing with you.
Wonderful. Alex, if you would mind, are you on social, and could you share your Twitter handle so listeners can find you on social networks?
Yes, I'm in Twitter, I'm at The Generalist, and the company is at Perfect Price Inc. And on LinkedIn, I'm my name, Alexander Shartis, and also Perfect Price.
Wonderful. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our discussion today. So Alex, your company, Perfect Price, uses AI to solve the problem of dynamic pricing. Can you tell us what makes AI so effective in this situation?
It's a question we get a lot, so thanks for asking. I think what makes AI effective is that for the companies that we work with, they have a tremendous amount of data. And when you have a lot of data, it's really hard to sift through all of it with people. And so what you end up doing is simplifying the problem so that it's something that people can deal with, but then you lose a lot of fidelity in that, and you become a lot less efficient. And so what AI does is it enables people to, like our customers and other companies, to be able to manage their pricing across a very large number of products, locations, very complicated businesses, without having to manage massive amounts of rules and really complicated workflows.
Excellent. So we also hear a lot about AI in the media, but what applications of AI are being used today?
So this is a big misconception we've found. If you use Facebook, you use AI every day. If you use Google, you use AI every day. So there are a lot of products that we just take for granted that use AI and are just part of our daily lives. I think when it comes to business tools and tools that enterprises use, there's a lot of misconceptions there as well. So first, about half of the products that say they use AI don't. Done recently on startups in Europe where the vast majority actually didn't use AI but said they did. But there are products that do outside of pricing. One a good example is a company called Text.io, which looks at job postings and guides companies in making job postings that appeal to more applicants using AI and natural language processing, and a lot of others as well. So Amazon famously uses AI and machine learning to manage its inventory and make sure that it has products in stock and has products queued up in warehouses that are close to people about to buy them.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So you also mentioned true AI. How would you define what true AI is?
Yeah, so there are a bunch of different definitions of AI floating around in the marketplace, and I think if you look at the technical definition, that's really one of machines being able to make decisions on their own without being given rules by people. So they're able to take in data and generate their own behaviors or make their own decisions without being explicitly told what to do. And so when we talk to revenue managers or pricing managers, a lot of them go to the traditional operations research approach of, oh, well, if it's a Monday, people are willing to pay more, or if it's summer, people are willing to pay more. And that isn't, by setting a rule that says charge more in the summer, that isn't, that's a rule. That's not AI. And so you have a lot of people that are marketing solutions, both in the pricing world and outside of the pricing world, that may be effective, but they're not. They still require that human understanding and the human guidance. when we talk about AI and the way our software works, you train it with data, let's say transactions, and it learns from the data that Mondays people are willing to pay more. You don't have to tell it that. It doesn't actually know in the sense that a human would know that Mondays are a reason why people pay more. It just discovers that a higher price on Monday results in more sales. So a lot of companies talk about having AI, but I think from a marketing standpoint, it's a pretty abused term. When we talk about AI, it's the ability for the machine to just understand without being explicitly told what to do.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And what other companies are using dynamic pricing?
So, I mean, there are a lot of examples of new companies using dynamic pricing, and there are a lot of examples of legacy companies using, what we would call pre-internet dynamic pricing. So, I mean, the airlines are probably the most famous early adopter of dynamic pricing or revenue management, as it were, dating back to the 70s and 80s. But today, when you look at the new landscape, you have companies like Uber, which is probably the most obvious. Uber has always been extremely aggressive in how it talks about using dynamic pricing and how surge pricing is really important to their business. The reality with Uber is that they're 40% to 50% less than a taxi cab ever was, right? So they've created a pricing environment in which they are much lower than the prices used to be and are for taxi riders. While at sometimes, yes, they might be higher, but it's because they can do that because of dynamic prices. Drivers show up because they're fully utilized during off-peak times when taxi drivers used to sit around in front of hotels, and then they're making a lot of money. And so a lot of people show up to drive on a Friday night in a big city where there's a lot of demand. So Uber is a really famous one. Some other ones that might not use AI, but have moved to dynamic pricing. One of my favorite examples right now is Vail Resorts. So Vail Resorts has really advanced how the ski industry does pricing in general. And so now you'll see different lift ticket prices on different days of the week, on different lift ticket prices if it's a snowy day versus a not snowy day. So, it used to just be $60 every day of the year. Now Vail has a very sophisticated strategy that's driving a lot more people towards buying season passes. And dynamic pricing is a big part of that. If you plan on going skiing over a holiday, you might as well go buy a season pass because it might be really expensive. Whereas if you plan on skiing a couple off-peak days, they'll still capture that demand without forcing you into a pass. So those are a couple examples that are kind of spread across the spectrum from your everyday purchase at Uber to your more lifestyle, more entertainment type purchase at a ski resort, and there's a ton in between. I mean, there are Amazon and Lyft, and there are many other good examples, but those are two that have really stuck with me as exemplifying the broad range of dynamic pricing strategies.
Excellent. And let's switch gears a little bit. Are there any downsides of incorporating dynamic pricing?
Yes, I mean, I think like any tool in the pricing manager's arsenal, there are positives and negatives. I think that Uber is a great example of some of the negatives. That if you don't message it correctly, or you don't position what you're doing in a way that appeals to the consumer, you can have a lot of blowback. I think Uber may have viewed that as any press is good press, and so maybe that was part of their strategy. Maybe it was an unintended side effect. But I think in any pricing strategy, you have to be really conscious of what the consumer expectations are. So I think when you look at, I guess you could go deeper on Uber, right? There was a surge price during the London bombing attacks, which is just a side effect of having a dynamic pricing engine, and then having something really unexpected happen and start to, again, have the machine learn that prices should go up. But I think when you step back and you think about it, right, there's a financial and there's a marketing component to that decision. And so the whole organization has to come together around what is the right way for their business to implement dynamic pricing. We've talked to, for example, OEM car manufacturers who want to move to dynamic pricing because the reality is through salespeople, pricing in the new car market is actually somewhat dynamic already. But they don't want to change prices every hour like a rental car company would. maybe they want to change prices every week because people look for cars over a longer period of time. Even within them, some view a week as too fast because it takes on average people 3 weeks to decide to buy a car. Other people view it as great. If the price moves around, that might create a sense of urgency. And so changing prices weekly might drive people to purchase for fear of the price changing against them a week later. So there are different strategies, and each company has to come up with what works for them, and then match the implementation to that strategy.
Excellent. And what is the risk of not incorporating dynamic pricing into your pricing strategy?
So a lot of people get comfortable in what they're doing, and I think change, especially in pricing, as we all know, is a really hard pill to swallow. And so there are a lot of examples of transformational pricing strategies happening, when desperation struck. I mean, you could even call Netflix's recent price change not necessarily desperation, but a reflection of the higher cost of capital and the need to just generate more revenue to pay more money for shows. I think the risk for dynamic pricing are existential. So, back in the 1980s, People Express was put out of business by American Airlines because American Airlines moved to a dynamic revenue management pricing strategy, and People Express kept static prices. And so suddenly People Express saw its off-peak planes flying empty and its on-peak flights oversold, with American filling them as well at a much higher price point. So, there were 20 airlines already this year that went bankrupt and shut down. I think the most recent one was WOW Air from Iceland. So, if your competitors are doing dynamic pricing and you aren't, you're going to have issues. And if your competitors are working on implementing dynamic pricing and it takes a year and you haven't started yet, even though they're not doing it yet, you may find yourself really suffering once they put it out in the market, get those learnings and have that impact. And you have to start from a standing stop.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And finally, Alex, what industries do you believe can benefit most from dynamic pricing?
So, I mean, as a lot of these examples are B2C companies, and I think that in general is a good place to start. So if you're a B2C company selling either large volumes of products or across a large number of locations, generally speaking, a complex business, which most pricing managers work for complex businesses, those are a great place to start. I think if you have a lot of products and you sell very, very, or like by a lot, I mean like 100,000 products, or you sell very large ticket items like jet engines to a very limited number of customers, or if all your customers are buying on an annual contract basis, you send out a price sheet in January and that's just the prices for the year, then dynamic pricing is obviously not a great fit for you. But wherever you have, even if it's a relatively small portion of your business, a good example is one company we work with, and this is true in a lot of other industries, 40% of their business is their direct-to-consumer business, and then they have the rest of their business is selling to companies and B2B buyers. But that 40% is where a lot of the profit is, because that's how they absorb extra capacity. That's how they increase their per unit sale price, because their long-term customers are locked into lower prices. So I mean, by focusing there, they're able to drive really high returns, even though there are other parts of their business that might not be dynamically priced. So, in terms of specific industries, transportation in general is always a great fit. Whether it's car, different aspects of the car industry, whether it's selling cars, leasing cars, renting cars, different aspects of trucking. Certain trucking type businesses can be really get a lot of value from it. Cargo, airlines, and some of the other travel categories like hotel are great. But even outside of that, there are other industries that are capacity constrained that you might not think of, that might be a good fit. And I think if you worry as a business or as a pricing manager, your job has to do with what managing capacity constraints, then dynamic pricing can be a really good fit for you.
Awesome. Alex, thank you. We are at the end of our podcast, and we appreciate you joining us and sharing your insights on dynamic pricing and real-world applications. PPS is excited to celebrate 30 years in bringing you the best in pricing workshops and conferences. And to make this event even more special, we're hosting it right here in our hometown of Atlanta, Georgia, May 7th through the 10th. Alex will be there with us presenting in our data science track on Thursday, May 9th. And his topic is the art of pricing in an AI-driven world. So we hope our listeners out there will join Alex and the Professional Pricing Society in a great week filled of learning. Please visit our website for more information, pricingsociety.com, about our other conferences coming up this year, as well as our online pricing courses and our certification program. Get social with PPS and subscribe to our blog, thepricingauthority.com. Follow us on Twitter at Pricing Society, and stay tuned for any announcements we may have coming up on additional pricing podcasts where our other industry experts will join us to share their pricing expertise as well. Alex, do you have any parting words of wisdom or advice for our listeners out there?
No, thank you. I hope this was valuable to them. And if they want to know more, they're welcome to go visit our website where we have a book, perfectprice.com/book, or follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn where we post on these subjects quite frequently. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in Atlanta.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.